Wayne Williams, Chair of the Pikes PPRTA. I call this meeting to order. Okay, I opened this meeting. And while we await, actually, I see our quorum maker here.
Quorum is running. Not really, but.
Okay, we have a quorum. I will therefore call this meeting to order. And we'll begin just going around with introductions. I'm Wayne Williams, an at-large member of Colorado Springs City Council, Chair of the Pikes PPRTA. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Oh, here.
If you can introduce yourself.
Oh, I missed that we had started with the quorum. So Lena's Gonzalez, El Paso County Commissioner, District 4.
Holly Williams, Commissioner, District 1, El Paso County.
Go back to Rolla.
Lisa Corey, Finance Manager for PPRTA.
Jennifer Ivy, Legal Counsel.
Totally. Gail Sturdivant, City of Colorado Springs, City Engineer and Deputy Public Works Director.
Josh Palmer, County Engineer, El Paso County.
Jared Werner, Public Information Officer.
Councilmember Avila.
Oh, Councilwoman Yolanda Avila, Colorado Springs, District 4. And Roland Gardine brought me cake this morning for Leroy and I. So thank you so much.
Randy Helms, Colorado Springs City Council Member, District 2. And I want to congratulate Yolanda on her and Leroy's marriage.
And now the Mayor's Row. Roland.
Sure.
Introduce yourself. We're just introducing.
I did already.
Okay, you already did. Fine.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry.
Dennis Carpenter, Mayor Rama.
Todd Dixon, Mayor, Green Mountain Falls. John Graham, Mayor, City Manager Springs.
Yeah. Well, now let's see. Let's go back to start in the very back this time. We'll have variety. Okay.
Larry Tobias, first time Chairman of the CAC.
Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC.
Andy Gunning, PPACG, PPRTA.
Landwell, Acting Transit Manager.
Okay, did I miss anybody with columns or anything else? Okay. We do have a quorum. You have the agenda in front of you. Are there any changes proposed for the agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion?
So moved, Commissioner Williams.
second, Helms.
All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Carries unanimously.
Do we,
Brings us,
Mr. Chair, do we have anybody online? Any of the directors online by chance? I can't see.
Mr. Chair, we do not.
okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for that question. Brings us to public comment for items not on the agenda. And is there anyone in chambers who would like to comment on any item not on the agenda? Seeing none. Is there anyone online who wishes to comment on any item not on the agenda? Seeing none, public comment is closed on items not on the agenda. It brings us to item 4, which is the approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Commissioner Williams, so moved.
Second, John Graham.
I've got a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Turn it over now for item 5, which is our Citizen Advisory Committee monthly report. Jim, take it away.
And good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. Like to quickly go over our meeting this past week. The first item on our agenda was some line item transfers from the city, the city. They had 6 line item transfers. And we approved all those. Many of those were being moved into much of that money was moved into some project funds in order to address and fund Mark Sheffel and the work on Mark Sheffel on the major intersection improvements and some roadway issues out there to kind of bridge the gap to RTA 3 when that's an A-list project. We had a good discussion about that, and on that same memo is also kind of a funding for a summary of Mark Sheffel project, where they're going to spend that money in that project too. So we recommend approval of the city's request for line item transfers. The second item that we had a discussion on, and Gail went over really well, was the multiple projects, the 11 projects or so for the city. We had no major issues with any of their project requests and make a recommendation for the board's approval on their projects. The county had the list of their projects. It looks like a long list, and it is a long list, but it is their annual renewals of a lot of their quantity contracts. Many of them are $0 amounts, and we had no issues with any of the county's requests either, and recommend that you approve those. Coming up on your agenda will be two items. One of them is, let's see which one's first, Board Policy 30. Board Policy 30. The board asked us, the CAC, to look at, if you remember, there's a policy for very large projects that instead of having the small change order dollar, the lower threshold, that for large projects, a member government could bring it in and raise that threshold so that for large projects, so they don't have to keep coming back and forth all the time. And we were talking about that last month, and the board asked us to look at, or maybe it's 2 months ago, but ask us to look at maybe a sliding scale so that that dollar amount was not just a solid dollar amount, but more of a sliding scale. And so we had a long discussion about that. And I just wanted to share with you where we were discussing. We're going to postpone. We don't have a recommendation, but this is coming back to you with where we are and what we discussed, and get any feedback that you may have, additional feedback that you may have, and we'll come back to you next month with a recommendation for approval. So what the recommendation and what we looked at was, they established a 3-tier system. Tier 1 was 1.25 mil to 5 mil. Tier 2 was 5 to 10 mil, and Tier 3 was more than 10 mil. And so Gail and Josh were very helpful in providing input and participation on this, and Rick was also. And so using about a 2% value of the contracts, the change order values kind of ranked out as 100,000 for Tier 1, 200,000 for Tier 2, and Tier 3. The original discussion we had was 400,000, and that is based on the total of all change orders, an aggregate of all the change orders on a project. There were the CAC members that had some concerns and consternation about a $400,000 change order to a project being approved by staff and not coming through the process. They thought that was just a big number. And even though they're still shown on the information of all the change order log that we see each month, they felt like that with a $400,000 change order, that was just a little uncomfortable. So we batted around and discussed and talked. And so on the Tier 3, we lowered that 2% of total contract down to 1.5, which would make on Tier 3 for projects greater than 10 million, that lower that number to 350,000. So anything greater than 350 would come through the process, through the CAC and the board for those change orders. 300, I'm sorry, 300. Sorry, my bad. So that would be, anything over 300,000 would come through the process with the CAC and board. Excuse me. So we just kind of wanted to see what you thought about the direction we were headed and, get any feedback you might have, and I'll take it back and we'll hammer it out next month.
Any feedback from the board on this?
I think it sounds good.
Beyond those few words, any additional? Okay.
Okay.
I take that to indicate that we appreciate the work you're doing very much and glad you were spending the time. And ultimately, I think that'll be a better process than the ad hoc way we do it now. So thank
Okay.
you.
And we, we're sensitive to staff time, and we're also sensitive to making sure that we run a balance between, we don't want to get in a situation where we're holding up work because we haven't got a meeting. And you need to have that flexibility. And sometimes with those large projects, those change orders can be large dollar numbers. And so we want to find that balance. And I think the trust of the people that we work with and the staff is there. And so we'll press on with this and get back to you next month. The other item,
Jim,
oh.
let me just emphasize, I think one of the points I understand is that you will still see that list as a CAC. It'll just won't hold up the project. And so if you do start to have questions about improper use, you do have the ability to review those and come back.
Yes, good point. Thank you. So we do see as an informational item, all change orders, a list of all change orders. And so if there is a large dollar value on there, we always have the option of asking the staff to provide us some background or information on that. So that's always an option. So we'll see it. It's just not part of the approval process. So, the other item that's on your list later in your agenda is policy number 32. And that was to define what is considered completely funded as we go into the final year of the A-list projects. We want to be able to have the municipalities and member governments to declare a project fully funded. But what does that mean? And so in your packet is what we defined as fully funded. And there's a little bit of a 7-step process at the back of that defines what we mean, how the last stuff will work when we're balancing. This needs to take place during the budget formulation for 2024. So where we've got projects that are, was it a 10% reserve we had, was 5%? Oh, make Gail.
If it was at bid, if we've already had construction bids, it was 5%. If it was at the end stages of the engineering effort, and then let me back up, it was a minimum of 5% at the discretion of the local government. If it was less than a bid, so final design just before bid, and we refer to it as a class 1 or class 2 estimate, we would recommend at least a 20% contingency.
Okay, any questions? Ask Gail. No. We had a long discussion on this. It was trying to fuse, and we wanted to make sure that we got it right. But I think what's in your packet, a description of what that is in your packet is the way we lined it out. And I want to thank the folks. We're certainly, there's a lot of engineers on the CAC, but it's the people sitting over here and the other member governments, head engineers that really are responsible for making that. And you guys in your positions of making sure that a project's fully funded. And this needs to happen during the budget formulation process this summer, later this year, as we go into that, so that we can balance money and move money between municipalities as we need. We still have the reserves, the strategic reserves that we have, that we can always draw upon as projects progress down the chain of execution and being led and honored. So we do make a recommendation that you approve the definition of completely funded as in your packet today. And I think that was it for the CAC meeting, unless you've got some questions that I can attempt to answer or get some help from Gail and Josh.
So I know the one item we'll have later on the agenda, we'll have some discussion, then we may call you back for more input
Okay.
at that stage. Are there any other questions on that? Seeing none, is there a motion to accept, which isn't written in on my action item there? I'm thinking, I think it says accept, but I just can't read it. Is there a motion to accept the CAC's report?
So moved. Holly Williams.
Second. Todd Dixon,
Motion's
Mayor
been made and seconded. All in favor of accepting,
I,
say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay?
I'm trying to hurry him along here.
Okay, thank you. Monthly financial report is brief.
I don't have January figures yet. So I would normally, that's what I would be reporting. The sales and use tax receipts have not been made available to me yet. I think everyone has already seen December. We had this problem last month, but I emailed them out when they were complete. So I guess I'll just highlight on December, since we're here, that we did meet budget. We ended the year with $156,206,057. And the amended budget was 156 million. So 0.1%, but we made it. So
I appreciate that. And it's a pretty amazing to actually get that close when it's an entirely sales tax based budget. So you don't have any like constants in there. So good job. Appreciate it.
yeah.
Any other questions on the financial reports that you received? And again, it all depends where we are in the month. And so we will anticipate mailing something out in the next couple of days when we receive it from the state. Brings us to item 7, which are the capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. Gail, are there ones of these that you want to call attention to in the city's portion?
Mr. Chair, I believe there's an item before that to discuss a line item transfer.
Yes, that's what I wanted.
All right,
Okay.
perfect. Gail Sturdivant, City of Colorado Springs. Today I'm bringing to the board for their consideration a series of line item transfers to fund an existing A-list project and to shift funding from a couple other A-list projects into the 2024 year, so we have cash available to proceed with some construction activities for Mark Shuffle Road. So on the second page is this particular memo. I'm going to kind of walk through this. Actually, let me stay on the first page. So what I'm proposing to do is to remove $5 million from the PPRTA project, A-list project, the Academy Boulevard from Milton Proby Parkway to Fountain. And with that $5 million, reapply $2 million of that dollars to Academy Boulevard from the Bijou to Airport Road project. That project needed additional funds in that program year to really fulfill the obligations within that contract. The other $3 million would be going to the roadway safety and traffic operations program with the intent of going towards Mark Shuffle Road. The next line item transfer is actually the third bullet down is to remove $5 million. Oh, let me stop right back where I'm at. Of the $5 million that was removed from the south phase of Academy Boulevard from Fountain to Milton Proby Parkway, that's just moving $5 out of the 2023 budget. The $5 million is reapplied in my 2024 CIP or capital improvement plan. So the overall total amount for that project remains the same. What I'm really doing is freeing up cash in 23 and planning to replenish that money in 24. I have a contract in place. As contracts presented, just from a cash flow standpoint, the payout on the contract won't happen. I won't need the funds until we get into 2024 for that particular work.
Gail, does moving it from 23 to 24 in any way delay the actual construction?
Absolutely.
Of the project?
It has absolute zero impact on the construction progress.
Okay.
Um,
Port of
the-
Bravila.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So when I went over this, I became really concerned because we've done a lot of line item transfers from the South Academy Boulevard projects, both from Bijou, starting from Bijou and then both starting from Fountain. And I know I hear that it doesn't have any impact, but I remember over 3 years ago, the mayor, Mayor Southers, since we have so many mayors in here, said, you know, Yolanda, pretty soon you're going to be getting all those complaints. You're going to be getting those calls. So I'm trying to understand if it has no impact, and in the past it hasn't had any impact. Why didn't these projects start like 3 years ago or 4 years ago when it was anticipated that they were going to start? We just had an open house, a week and a half ago or 2 weeks. And last Monday, we were supposed to start reconstruction on South Academy Boulevard at Bijou, and I've not seen anything. So it feels like we're moving money around, like to pay one credit card and then get zero interest on this credit card. So we'll take it from that. And this is a capital project that's going to program instead of another capital project. I just need help in understanding that. And I feel really concerned. I feel like it seems to me, whether it's true or not, just like with rural districts, it's kind of get the short end and they're at the end of the process. When you say that 24, we're gonna have that money. I mean, we're at like the 9th year of PPACG, right? I mean, of the PPRTA, sorry, projects for PPRTA 2. So I just have great concerns about that. And I don't understand if like it's not ready to go. Why isn't it ready to go? Why hasn't it been ready to go since a Cimarron interchange when we transferred money over there? So I need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
I would say for both those South Academy projects, my understanding of our recollection is that they brought an engineering consultant on board to start that design process sometime in 2019. And they've been progressing through that process with a lot of utility coordinations. And we did have Colorado Springs Utilities come back when they had additional ARPA funding that came in 2020, where they wanted to do some utility upgrades and advance the roadway. And it did cause some delay in the design process, but ultimately you're getting a $9 million investment from Colorado Springs Utilities in that corridor, in addition to the PPRTA's commitment to do the road reconstruction in that ability or in the area. In addition, the road reconstruction, because what we heard when we started the design process, there was a lot of concern about pedestrian access and lighting those areas. So we've actually been able to increase the scope of what was originally thought of at that project when we went to the ballot in 2012 for what's the good of the citizens and right thing to do for a transportation project by adding sidewalks, a multi-use path and street lighting in that area, because we do have a high population of walkers and cyclists in that area. So it makes sense. So anyway, from 2019 into 2022, when we got the bids, you know, that was just the project evolution time period. Why it didn't start before 2019, unfortunately, I cannot speak to that. I'm sure it's where it fell in the 10-year program to some regards, but it is progressing. I know people want to see major construction, but they've been working on utilities significantly in the airport and Academy intersection for 3 or 4 months now. And they're doing what they can to progress with the road work now at this point. It's just hard to, when you see spot locations for the utility work.
So, yeah, and they finished that a couple weeks ago at airport in South Academy. I was blocked from going to power, so I was on top of that one. So I guess it's not a satisfactory
I've got a question too.
answer. Okay.
Well, are you done, Yolanda?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Right, so how many times has any of the South Academy Boulevards had transfers taken from? Because I think I recall at least a couple.
I would think, I think Lisa may know, I have personally not taken a transfer out of South Academy that I recall.
There's been 2 in 2019 and 2016.
How much?
Total amount,
Yes, if you have it.
7,750,000.
Okay, so this is an issue because I think Yolanda's residents, her constituents, my constituents see the same thing. Why does South Academy, why does the southeast part of the Springs keep getting things like this happen to our neighborhoods and our residents? The money gets transferred up to other parts of the city. This is something we continue to see. And at some point, the resident's going to take this and see that this is the piggy bank for other parts of the city. And that's a concern. So I support Yolanda's concern on this as well.
Let me ask a question. So 700,000 roughly was transferred. How much has been transferred back? 7 million. How much has been transferred back?
Right now it's within about $1 million of being made whole again, due to each subsequent year with their budget allocations. And my understanding is it is supposed to be made completely whole with the 2024 budget allocations. So it will be like nothing has come out of
And
it.
can I add that through the budget process over the last couple of years, I've actually added an additional 8.5 million on top of that.
But if the millions were in there 7 years ago, they could have started these projects earlier. You're making it whole to make it the last project started.
Yeah, and I want to add too, it wasn't just South Academy Boulevard. I mean, I've gotten my district so excited. They came to the open house. You saw that, Gail, right? We had over 60 people there and people are like, yeah, finally things are happening. It was really great with the PPRTA project on Airport Road, which I'd been asking for since 2012. And again, it was utilities, so it was delayed a couple of years, and the residents in my district are so grateful. And they were very excited about the open house and like, oh, we're going to start on Monday. This is going to be awesome. Yolanda, I finally feel like I can have some trust for our government, and it looks like they're really doing something. And I'm getting what I thought you said it was going to start. And I do say, well, the utilities is going to do their thing, but I don't understand if we've had the money. And Gail, I know that you haven't been here. Like, I remember the line item transfer for the Cimarron interchange, but I know you weren't here. And I don't want to get on staff because I think you guys do a fabulous job. I'm concerned that the CAC didn't talk about this more. And I'm wondering if anybody in Southeast is on the CAC. So this is really important because we do keep getting till the very end are the leftovers. And I'm really, really concerned that 24 comes and 25 comes. I mean, you didn't want to raise the maintenance of effort to 2019 because like, well, we might not have it. What if we don't get that revenue, that there's some kind of recession or something's happening and then we're out, we're not there. So I won't be supporting this. And another thing is the Circle Bridge. I mean, that's been going on forever too. And we're going to take $5 million, right, out of Circle Bridge to go up to Mark Shuffle again. And that project has been going. And what is the delay? If we've had the money, how come we can't start these projects in Southeast? I don't get it.
Council, I can specifically speak to Circle Drive. We do have a contractor on board. We have been having a lot of challenges with the railroads making a change of direction on how they want to proceed with our last agreement. It's referred to as a construction and maintenance agreement. It was actually finalized with the BNSF Railroad, ready for signature. And UP, who actually owns the property, asked us to take a completely different form of agreement with them. And now we have to enter into a 3-party agreement with BNSF, UP, and then the city for construction and maintenance. We've been working with our construction contractor to see if there's work we can do outside the impact of the area for the railroads, because they're ready to, we're chomping at the bit to get going. But it actually makes sense for us to delay the start of that construction until October. So they're not paving in the winter. They can start in October and start with some of the subsurface stuff, start with the piers in that area. It gives us time to work out through some of these issues with the railroads. And the end, they're scheduled to end in the middle of 2025. That is not changing, but what is changing is their start date because of their efficiencies and what we anticipate to be a higher quality of construction product in the end.
So they're going to be completely finished by mid-2025, did you say?
That is their intent. That is what the schedule is showing, and we're comfortable with the schedule that they've delivered.
Okay, so that's really scary. That's where the high school is. And those kids are taking their lives into their own hands. And I'm sure that that's why that project was recommended for PPRTA too, as with South Academy Boulevard. So this just keeps getting, it's been pushed back, for too long. And here we're at the very end. We've already, the citizens have already voted for PPRTA 3, but it's just in totality, it's not, like I said, it's not the staff, the city staff. It's very frustrating. I think you hear it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add on a little bit.
Yes.
Again, this is not gonna look good. We talk about promises made, promises kept. We keep saying delays. It looks like the Southeast keeps getting ignored. This is not gonna look good. It's not gonna be good. And the city may not think anything is wrong or looks wrong, but I'm gonna give you an example of something they did a couple of years ago that nobody thought looked bad or was bad, but this is something that maybe just city or some leaders don't get what it looks like. So in August 3rd, 2019, I don't want to rehash any bad stuff, but Devon Bailey shooting, okay, community backlash, protests in the community, August 3rd, 2019, September 13, weeks later, a month and a half later, because the city was over budget on the fire department, $1.5 million, they had to cut money. All right, so they cut back on overtimes. And what did they do within weeks of that Devon Bailey shooting where you had protests in the Southeast? From a media report on having to cut back. Initial cuts included shutting down an advanced life support paramedic unit serving the southeast part of town, which is suspended for 6 days. Did they shut it down up in Banning Lewis? Did they shut it down in Northgate? Did they shut it down in Broadmoor area? No, they shut it down in the southeast. Where's the crime at? Downtown, southeast. Where are the homicides? Downtown, southeast. And somebody in the city thought that was not a bad decision. That was a terrible decision. And I'm concerned this is going to be the same way. People aren't looking at this the right way. And I'm very concerned. I won't be able to support it.
And Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So I've driven Academy a little bit in the past couple of weeks. And then I know what the Black Forest Road project looks like because of the video updates I receive on it. So if we were to leave the money in Academy, when will the contractor be out with a shovel digging holes?
I don't know that I could give you a specific date. That they're eminent. They're out there doing some work and prep work as we speak. When they're going to have an excavator out there, I can't speak, but I can tell you the city has a contract with the contractor already for both phases of South Academy. All we're doing is shifting the monies from our 23 budget into our 24 budget. We still have an obligation. We've still actually obligated that money. Thankfully, you guys have seen when we program money over multiple years, you have allowed us to let those contracts because they're shown in our program. We have a commitment to fund that contract to completion. So regardless of for this money change, there would be no difference in when you'd actually see a shovel on the ground.
Okay, that's the important thing. Thanks.
So I will note that I've had concerns in the past where the city rushed a project on Colorado Boulevard without making sure everything was done ahead of time. And that, as we've had discussions at this board, there've been a host of cost issues related to that because we had not finished the utility work ahead of time. We had not finished the other work ahead of time. And ultimately that cost the taxpayers a lot of money. And so I go back and I want to follow up with Commissioner Williams's question. If this transfer is approved, is the construction of the road affected in any way, shape, or form?
With this transfer, it would not be impacted. I would say in full disclosure, we are negotiating a change order with the construction contract with the South Phase. Right now, we're anticipating having the money to be able to cover that contract or that change order. with the funds available. So in addition to the construction contract.
And then the other question I had for you with respect to the changes that are, I guess not so much a question as a point, because some of my colleagues may not be aware of what happened when the utility construction you're referring to. Colorado Springs Utilities set up a fund to bury power lines. And the second project in the city was along this stretch of Academy Boulevard. The other one was downtown. And so because CSU said we want to bury power lines in this area, that's what you were referring to in terms of the delay.
That's not their specific one. They actually have major water line relocation or replacements that they're doing in the area.
Okay.
In both phases. And at Airport and Academy, they have gas line relocation, and then they ended up, and this was added on at the last minute, which is why the intersection was so close. They're actually doing some water line replacement at the intersection as well. They did do some water line replacement there as well. So most of the utilities that are within the road bed have all been upgraded in conjunction with this project.
Okay. And then you're coordinating with utilities so the upgrades take place first as opposed to
Absolutely.
after the road's being built.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Avila.
Thank you. So since before, since 2C started, we've been coordinating with utilities, right? We make sure utilities does their thing so that we don't redig again if something goes on. And so we've been doing this. I don't know how long, maybe at least 6, 7, 8 years now. So we've been doing this. So we've known that we have to have coordinated with utilities in the last, since this project's been the last, I'm going to say 8 years since PPRTA 2 started. So it doesn't seem fair to say, well, we have to coordinate with utilities and they've got to do their stuff. And then we're going to, do ours. That's kind of what happened with the bridge at Airport Road. Is like, it was going to start. It was like, oh, well, we didn't coordinate. So now we're going to coordinate and they're going to do their thing. So this is like you say, it won't make a difference. So am I hearing that all along it was not meant to break ground until 2023 or 24? And that I was just told 4 or 5 years ago that it was going to break ground within a year? Because I don't understand that at that time, like I said, the mayor said, you're going to get all the complaints. So, you're going to hear your phone ringing a lot. So it seems like it did make a difference. And it seems to me logically that if we don't have the money, all of it there, and we're transferring it here and there, that it's an incentive, that it's a real incentive not to begin until we have to, and to the absolute last minute that we can do it. And so I can't support this, because I think if we show we have it now, we're going to do everything in our power to get things rolling like now. But that's all I have to say. I wanted, and I do equate it to the rural areas that we represent, because I think the rural areas, that's why I'm so supportive of any projects that they want to do, because I think they're not really listened to at times. And I feel like Southeast very correlates with what's happening in the rural areas of the districts that we serve.
So I'd like to.
I'm going to call on those who haven't had a chance to speak first. Councilmember Helms.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question for Gail and others that may know this. So in case we do not transfer the funds, will the South Academy project start sooner?
No, because it is technically already started and the contractor is going to progress. We have a construction contract and a commitment to already go and do that work. So there will be no impact on construction, whether accelerating it or delaying it at this point.
Yeah, that led to my second question. Could it be accelerated if the funds are not transferred?
The answer is no.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else who hasn't spoken to the issue yet who wants to ask? Okay, back to Commissioner Gonzalez then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, the article just weeks ago talked about 69 years, I think, They've been waiting for this project. And I, like Yolanda's comments from perhaps 4 years ago, that this might have gotten started, if not for the 7 million being transferred out during multiple times. So my concern again is the Southeast is going to look like we're put at the bottom of priorities for the city. And that for residents waiting 69 years to have this development project happen, that money get taken where residents have lived for decades and the community is waiting for 69 years and transferred to an area that's brand new to the city. It's just something that is going to look like you again are ignoring and not taking the residents of the Southeast seriously. Thank you.
Okay. Board member or council member Helms.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question to my fellow board members are, if we don't transfer their money, how, and it can't be accelerated, how can we help that perception? How do we do that so the perception is not there that you just mentioned? How do we fix that?
Similar question. Are there
There.
other projects in the Southeast that the money could be transferred to?
They're taking it from both of the Southeast capital projects.
Well, that way the full amount would stay in the Southeast then.
Gail.
So right now, all of the city's CIP plan covers all PPRTA A-list projects for funding that's anticipating to be needed for A-list projects, regardless of where they're located within the city. So there is not another project in the Southeast that we would be transferring, that we have a need to transfer monies to. If you go and look at my quarterly reports, I've been showing contingency funds or potential B-list money available towards the end of the program for the last couple of years. Really what that is doing is leveraging that future funds or that future contingency and reusing that cash now to accomplish the A-list projects we already have programmed to be in construction this year, and use our program funds to be able to address another major safety issue. I will say the portion of Mark Shuffle Road that we're proposing to work on first is the south portion. It is the most southeast portion of the city limits really at this point in time. I'd have to go and verify on the map whether it was in Councilor Avala's or Commissioner Gonzalez's district. So, but I think relatively it's in that same portion of the city that we would be applying the money to, because we're focusing on that south end of Mark Shuffle Road.
Oh, it's way east. Mine ends at Powers.
I would. May I
Okay,
ask?
let me just ask a question. So Gail, you referred to, I'm looking at the subtotal of the A-list projects, and of the road projects, the 31 on the city list there, 14 of them appear to be completed, and 5 of those 14 completed are in Southeast. They're 5, 19, 21, 19, 20, 21, and 24. And
Yeah.
so what you're saying is we've already completed those Southeast projects, so you can't transfer any additional money to them.
Yeah, that is correct. I think the remaining southeast projects are the 2 phases of South Academy and Circle Drive bridges. I don't believe there are any others still in development in the southeast portion of the city.
Other questions on this issue? Then Commissioner Williams?
I believe if you're talking about starting on the south end of Mark Shuffle, that would be over by North Carefree and Acres Drive, where it's a one lane road, or it's, single lanes. So you go 4 lanes, 2 lanes, 4 lanes, 2 lanes.
Yes, that's correct. So with this project, we would be starting, our focus is going to be around improving the Barnes intersection. And then with the way we've been doing the phasing, we would extend that down to North Carefree. So through construction, it will still be 2 lanes, 1 lane in each direction, but ultimately it would be 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction. But this would give us a head start to address a safety issue in that area. And not only is it a safety issue from a transportation standpoint, with the development we do have on the east side of the city, right now, the only real way in and out of Banning Lewis Ranch is at Dublin and Mark Shuffle. Right,
Yeah,
today it
and-
does not attach to Woodman Road. There's no other legs coming back into Mark Shuffle. So it's really from a safety standpoint, we want to have a second egress into that portion of the city as well.
So I would speak in favor of supporting the transfer for a couple reasons. One is because I used to work on that side of the city and that Mark Shuffle Road is a big mess. Number two, it is a huge transfer road for our military servicemen to get into Peterson and to head out to Schriever. But in the same respect, as a community for many, many years, we have prioritized our military bases, which is why I have waited. I think since the last passage of this, we've waited a good 15 years and had a mess on Highway 105 in front of Monument Academy, a very dangerous mess for more than 5 years. And so I think I think I would be in support of that because I know that this is an equally important area. I get Yolanda's frustration because I have waited for Highway 105 and Beacon Light Road, and Monument's just going to be a total disaster for the next 3 years to get those done. But I know that we usually prioritize certain projects over the others.
Okay, back to Councilmember Avila.
I think Lahina just said 69 years, but
That's a hard ringtone to miss.
wow.
Does that mean we have to?
I mean, yeah,
Am I in trouble?
I've heard,
I'll put my hands up.
I've heard someone say they didn't hear the ringtone. I think you'd have a hard time making that argument.
Oh, that was great though. Some levity.
Yeah.
In 2019, the Southeast Express showed that Southeast shouldered 1/3 of the fatalities and injuries. And a lot of that was on South Academy Boulevard. So when we're talking about safety, I mean, this is about safety. And a lot of our military use South Academy Boulevard from Fort Carson. And so, 5 years that we're looking at, I don't know, 40 years. So it's, I figured this will pass, but it's just frustrating to hear it, over and over again. It's like screaming in the wind. And I don't know. I think if there would have been an incentive to say, and the city saw it as a city, and we as PPRTA board members saw it, said, that we put this on this capital list. We put it on there because we know it needs to be reconstructed. But then to turn around and make it at the very, very end. And so that I just want to say my 2 cents. I wish that there was something I could do. We could do. It just feels like if the money's there now that we could do something. I'm not totally buying that. And because when we really want something, boy, like we did the gap, it happened like what, in a year. So it's, I think the political will, honestly, I think it has to do with that.
Okay, Councilmember Helms.
Okay, as we all know, so I've been on the PPRTA board for almost 2 years. I'm trying to remember back and understand, did we in the last 2 years do anything to delay this project? And I have a reason for asking that question. Did we do anything to delay this project in the last 2 years? Or has it been set this way?
Gail?
Yeah.
I don't know that I know the exact answer to that, but I will tell you, and I don't have the benefit of seeing the capital improvement plans that were published over the years, but it does look like from the history that Lisa was so kind to provide that there was likely construction dollars programmed, or at least half the construction dollars programmed initially around 2019. With that large line item transfer that happened around that time, it's 2.75 million. I'm sure those monies were reused at that time for some other A-list project. I'm not sure exactly what that was for. I will say though, when I go and look at the project history, we did not even get a consultant on board to start the design work until 2019.
Okay, the reason I asked those questions is in trying to make a decision whether to support the transfer of funds or not support the transfer of funds, because I too want to help with the perception. I just happen to have family members that live in the southeast part of Colorado Springs, and I travel up and down Academy Boulevard, north and south, Platte, et cetera. So I want to change that perception. But the but to that is not doing the transfer, at least unless someone can help me understand that will not do anything except maybe what you're saying, Yolanda, about it. If the money stays there, will it incentivize moving faster, if that's the right term, moving faster? I need someone to help me understand that will, and what I'm hearing from Gail and others, that it will absolutely not. Is that?
That's correct.
Let me, go ahead.
I was just going to finish by saying, I want to, and I think I heard you right when you said the 5 of the 14 projects in the southeast have been completed.
No, of the 14 completed projects in the city, 5 of those
Yes.
are in Southeast.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gail, could you address the rest of that transfer? Because when we talk about people waiting, it looks like there are some RTA 1 funds that are part of this transfer. Can you talk about the other transfers on this list, and then we'll open it back up for the discussion?
Yes, thank you very much. So I just covered the first of the 4 bullet points in the first memo. The second one is to remove some of the remaining funds from the Platte Avenue Bridge Replacement Project. Again, we're still closing that out, but we have $240,000 that we know that are available and not going to be encumbered. We would like to transfer those to the El Paso County Bridge Project so that construction can be completed. And then the next item is this is moving monies from the Circle Drive bridges, where we took $5 million from Circle Drive bridges out of 23, put the $5 million into 24, and then reuse that funding for the roadway safety and traffic operations program for the benefit of Powers Boulevard. And the last bullet is to take remaining RTA 1 funding as El Paso County has completed their Mark Shuffle Road projects and put it into the city's account for Mark Shuffle Road for benefit of the project. So those are the narratives related to that. On page 2 of the memo, I personally find, maybe it's because I'm an engineer, I find page 2 of this memo easier to see where money's coming out of an account and going into another account. So you can see on page 2 where for the north phase of Academy Boulevard, where the $5 million coming out, $2 million is going to the north. I'm sorry, let me back up. $5 million is coming out of the south phase. $2 million of which is going to the north phase of Academy Boulevard. The other $3 million would go into the roadway safety and traffic operations. The Circle Drive project would have $5 million out in 23 and going into the roadway safety and traffic operations. And then the Platte Avenue Bridge at $240,000 coming out of that and going to the El Paso Bridge over Fountain Creek. And then the 2 remaining accounts that the county was holding for RTA 1 funds, which is around $800,000. The last part, not the last part, but the next part of the memo really shows the conglomeration of remaining unobligated funding that the city has been working on building up to address these safety issues on Mark Shuffle Road. So you can see that with the unobligated amounts, and if this line item transfer were to proceed, and some other obligations, both from the city's general fund, developer contributions, and El Paso County maintenance funds, city has about $20.8 million. And then in the last portion of the memo, I republished my capital improvement program to demonstrate where those monies were replenished in the south phase of Academy Boulevard and the Circle Drive bridges in the 2024 program.
Okay, so let me ask a couple of questions here, then I'll open it up to my colleagues for questions. So when we say RTA 1 Mark Shuffle funds, those are funds from the initial RTA that was approved in 2004. And those Mark Shuffle improvements have been, those funds for Mark Shuffle improvements have been sitting there since the adoption of the Pikes Peak RTA. Well, the-
As they
the
were
promise
funded
is
over the
moving.
10-year period, yes.
Okay. So, yeah, when we talk about people waiting, I think that's a significant note, even longer than what we're talking about in terms of other RTA funds. Since it was in RTA 1.
I don't understand that. Can you explain that to me?
Sure.
So
Pikes
we
Peak-
didn't do that project from RTA 1. We didn't complete it.
Some of it was,
What
Right.
was asked for, like a capital
Yeah.
project that was put on the ballot, that was not completed, or was it?
the scope was completed.
So it
as
was completed.
redefined, but the $800,000 has been sitting in our bank account since the end of RTA 1, waiting to be allocated to Mark Shuffle.
Okay, but it was that PPRTA 1 was, because if it hadn't been, I'd be really scared, Wayne, because I was like, oh, this might not happen till PPRTA 10 or something.
Yeah.
So
No,
it was, so there was a capital project for PPRTA 1 up there at Mark Shuffle. And it was completed and they had $800,000 left over.
That's what I am told. I was not on the board at the time it completed, but I'm showing 800,000 coming out of Pikes Peak RTA 1. So I don't know, Rick, you may be the only one was here at the time. Do you recall why this has been sitting there for a decade?
I cannot, but I'd like to answer a different question. The Mark Shuffle project goes north from North Carefree up to Woodman and all the way over to Black Forest Road is the description on the PPRTA 1. So the section that was not completed of Mark Shuffle North is the section from North Carefree up to Dublin and or Woodman.
Okay, so
PPRTA 3.
yeah,
It's on PPRTA 3, but it was also PPRTA 1. And that section, that portion of that PPRTA 1 project was not completed. That's why the city, through with its funds, is trying to make a good faith effort to improve that section at this point.
yeah, let me add a little clarification, at least to the time I left the board, which Pikes Peak RTA 1 had a general description of a certain amount of money that was going to go to Mark Shuffle Road. And a project was completed. It did not build everything on Mark Shuffle Road, and the money was never enough to build all of it. So it said there will be improvements on Mark Shuffle Road. And apparently, this is where I don't know because I wasn't on the board at the time. There was 800,000 left after a logical section was done, and that's been sitting there since the end of RTA 1. There was a project completed, but that project left 800,000 in that fund, and and those have been in the county fund. If I'm looking at this correct, because those are being, and Joshua, I don't know if you from the county want to address that, since they are county funds that are there. And I then after we hear from Joshua, I'll turn it over to Jim Godfrey.
Sorry, yeah, I'd ask you to repeat the question.
Sure. The 800,000 is coming out of an El Paso County Mark Shuffle account. Do you have knowledge as to why this has been sitting in a county account for the last decade?
Well, I can say that we probably a year or so ago, we actually finally finished. So we had some lingering punch list drainage items. We had to get a pond rebuilt and recertified a couple times. So we weren't able to actually complete the project. And before we did any line item transfers, since it was a PPRTA 1 project, we wanted to make sure that all items for that project were completed. We knew that we were going to have funds left over after the project was actually complete. We can close out the PO, but until we knew exactly what that dollar amount was, we didn't want to execute or recommend any line item transfers. So the project has been substantially complete for a long time, but we've had these lingering drainage issues that actually ended up being probably more of a maintenance item. And as we were completing those maintenance items in the process of transferring over Mark Sheffel to the city, we wanted to make sure that the project was actually complete. The PO was closed out before we made recommendations for a line item transfer.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Jim Godfrey, and then I've got a list.
Jim Godfrey, I just want to point out that the rules for closing out RTA 1 were different than they are now. In RTA 1, anybody's project that finished and completed, the money was transferred into the pool. And because Mark Sheffel, there was a common pool. So if the city had a project, then they had extra money on it, it went into the pool. So everybody's money went into the pool. So it sat there. And because Mark Sheffel was not completed, that was the only project left that they could spend the money on that had not been completed and was designated. And that's the way I remembered. I know that because everybody funneled money into that pool. And there wasn't enough to complete much. There was work on the bridge on the north end of Mark Sheffel over Sand Creek that some of that money was used for if I'm this past couple of years. But there was again using that Mark Sheffel money or portion of that Mark Sheffel money that was sitting in the pool fund. So it wasn't necessarily all designated for Mark Sheffel, but that was the remaining project from RTA 1 that they could spend money on.
Okay.
So I'm confused. Was it completed? You're saying it wasn't completed?
Mark Sheffel has a long road and the whole road was not
But the
complete.
project that was approved by the voters,
Then that
was
portion,
completed.
the scope of that project was completed.
Okay, and that's as we relate it to the South Academy Boulevard and those bridges that circle. That's oranges and apples. I'm just wanting to get it started and completed. If there's money left over, then we figure out where that goes, but there's not money left over. We haven't even started it. So that's why I was wondering what you were talking about, Wayne, because it's like this project that was put on the ballot and the voters said yes was completed.
Yeah. This 800,000 that's been sitting there, if this motion goes through, is there any other Pikes Peak RTA 1 money left in either the county or the city accounts?
The city actually, I believe, had a developer just submit a check to PPRTA for the benefit of RTA 1 that, so yes, we're getting another chunk of money in, and there is the potential for future developer deposits into that account. My intent is to uncover and spend that money as quickly as possible towards the benefit of Mark Sheffel Road, but it's going up instead of down at this point.
Okay. And just so that folks who may be watching and are not aware, Pikes Peak RTA always presumed in some cases there might be developer contributions or other sources of funding. And so in some cases, a property may develop years after the project was completed and then the money comes in. So that's why you're saying it is for the benefit of it. And that's a different issue, I think, than what Jim was describing as kind of leaving contingency funds there. By the way, these contingency funds discussions we're having are going to be an important part of what we're discussing towards the end of the meeting with respect to how we address whether a project is fully funded, because there's enough money in RTA 2 that we anticipate being able to reach some of the B-list projects that we were never able to do with RTA 1. So, which I guess also answers in part, Yolanda, the question you raised, which is, are you sure it's going to get done? Because there's a buffer that actually can allow us to get into 2. We can into B, we will certainly have the money to finish all of the A-list projects. Randy.
Real quick, Mr. Chair, is there a way we can we come to a resolution of transferring these funds with the understanding that we can have some sort of for the Southeast in the future, PPRTA 3, can we have some priority given assurances for the Southeast? Is there a way to do that now so that we could move on, approve the transfer, have everybody appreciate approving the transfer with some assurances that in the future of PPRTA 3, the Southeast gets some kind of priority at the beginning? That's my question.
And I'm not sure there's a way to bind a future board or the county or city, but I will say a third of the projects that have been completed in RTA 2 were actually prioritized in Southeast. So
Okay.
there have been certainly priorities in Southeast.
Yeah, and those are like little ones too, right? We're talking $1 million and.
I'm just trying to get us.
Major projects is the.
$16 million Pikes Peak Avenue. So I wouldn't necessarily call that.
No, that's
minor.
not, that, well, I wish we'd do Circle to Shelton. That'd be great, but
I think that.
that's downtown.
On the Pikes Peak RTA 2, it was passed in 2012, right? We went into a recession,
Mhm.
but one of the issues was West Colorado Avenue, which kept having the tires and cars and all sorts of objects in the river. And that one had a lot of cost overruns as well. So, but I don't have an answer to anyone's questions here as to what to do differently. So.
Chair, you keep bringing up this number about most of the projects have been done. I would really like to get what that list is because Pikes Peak, that was downtown, closer to downtown. That wasn't in Southeast. And so let's really get a clear picture of what was actually in Southeast. And I know the future one is a study on Hancock Expressway. So we're not going to have really major projects in Southeast for PPRTA 3. And I think there's one on the B list for the Sand Creek to get that connected. So it's, I want to stick with it now, where we are now. And I feel like, you know, now hearing us out, you can feel the frustration, but I'm not buying that there will be, I feel like if we don't transfer and we have the money here, it would create more urgency. And I think we've been told that. And like you said, it hadn't even discussed until 2019. My goodness. So that's all. I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to just clarify.
So I appreciate that, council member. I would say that at least in my view, if Gail Sturdivant is saying that transferring it doesn't delay it and keeping it in doesn't accelerate it, I'm not understanding other than making a political statement, which I don't think is really the purpose of our board.
I got a question.
So
thanks.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is, so why are these monies being transferred into a roadway safety and traffic versus a mark shuffle thing? So are these monies going to be utilized directly for what is a PPRTA project or peripheral improvements that support the PPRTA project? Why is it not going to a mark shuffle?
So under the current PPRTA authorization, so PPRTA 2, there is not a named Mark Shuffle Road project. But what's evolved over the last 10,
So we're
11
not,
years
so we're moving this not to a name.
If you could let her please answer the question.
Okay, thank you.
So over the last 10 or 11 years, a major safety concern has arisen, both from crash congestion related on the Mark Shuffle Road corridor. The two programs we've been using to address those kinds of issues are the Intersection Safety Improvements Program and Roadway Safety and Traffic Operations. So over the last couple of years, knowing we had an issue we need to address, we've been trying to build up funds in these areas. I will say that the Mark Shuffle Road is a named project on PPRTA 3 list. So my intent is that you want to start addressing a safety issue now with the available cash we could have with RTA 2. My intent actually, this isn't a discussion about programming for RTA 3, but my intent is really to take some of those same monies and that were intended for Mark Shuffle Road and PPRTA 3 and apply them to other projects that are going to be needed in the future. So it's using the cash on hand to get its most done for our community at the time underneath what is approved by the voters and through the intents of those programs.
Okay, Commissioner Gonzalez.
So to clarify, for transparency, we're being asked to move money out of a PPRTA project to not a named PPRTA project to. When I brought this up months ago, as it related to the Hancock Expressway on a different issue, we said, well, can we front load some dollars to pay for, because the expressway straightening, which is a PPRTA 3 name project. I asked, well, can we fund some of that now and then repay it later? I was told no. So you're saying we couldn't do it back then for the expressway, Hancock Expressway, but we can do it now? That is
They're two different things. I'm actually proposing that we move funds from an existing named project to existing named program that is on the PPRTA list.
the slush fund. Yes. That's what you're asking for. So this goes back to the expressway thing. You guys said you couldn't, that was a named project in PPRTA 3. You guys said you couldn't do it when I asked this option months ago. Now you're saying you can do it for a different option.
I would say that the use of those funds or those programs for the PPR or for the Hancock Expressway program would not be the appropriate use, one. And two, that is through city code, that was a developer requirement. Not necessarily something that we'd be addressing from a safety or operation issues. Those aren't issues that we have in those areas.
Is Mark Shuffle a named PPRTA 2 project?
It is not.
Okay, thank you.
So let me ask a question. The proposal is to move it to the citywide intersection improvements. Phase 1, is that a voter approved Pikes Peak RTA 2 A-list project
That is correct.
or program?
Slush fund.
You may call it what you wish, Commissioner, but it's approved by the citizens of this community. And the roadway safety and traffic operations, is that a voter approved A-list program?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
This is where government loses credibility.
With respect to program funds, I believe both a number of jurisdictions, including the county, submitted program funds for RTA 3. So, and Joshua, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the voters have continued to approve that.
And Green Mountain Falls and Manitou Springs.
Thank you. So that was the list referred by this board. With that, Commissioner Williams.
I would like to make a motion to approve the line item transfers as outlined in item 7A.
Okay, motion has been made. Is there a second?
Randy Helms, I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. We've had extensive discussion. Is there any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, I'm going to do a hand vote if that's okay, because I suspect that this will be a divided vote. So all in favor, please raise your hand.
Can the people out?
Oh, you want to do a roll call? Certainly. Jennifer, if
you.
you'd like to do a roll call, please.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to use last names because that's what I wrote down on my little spreadsheet. So Avila,
No.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Gardine,
No.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Commissioner Williams,
Yes.
Dixon,
Yes.
Graham,
No.
Helms,
Yes.
Gonzalez.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, on a 5-4 vote by my count.
Um,
Fractions, but I think you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it winds up being, since you've got 2 from the full vote jurisdictions on each side and 2 from the,
Yes.
let me check. What is
So
the
I
actual vote?
believe my math, and
Okay.
Rick, I think is double checking me, is 4.5 in favor, 3.5 against. But I also couldn't count how many people were here earlier. So if we could just hold and make sure I have that correct.
I will wait. We do want to make sure we've got the vote count correct.
This is the most interesting one we've had since I've been on.
First time we've had to do the fractional voting here. Okay.
Yes, we agree. 4.5 in favor, 3.5 against.
Okay. So that does pass on a vote of 4.5 to 3.5. Brings us to item 7B on the agenda.
Sorry, that's the first time we've had to employ the fraction, so.
Well, and
We need a shot.
the-
Scotch now.
perhaps a simpler way of the full votes, there were 3 in favor and 2 against, and the fractional vote split 2 and 2. So it should be a 1 vote margin, and it is. Okay. So item 7B are the City of Colorado Springs capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. Are there any of those you wish to highlight, Gail?
I think the two most interesting that are on here that I'd like to bring to your attention is contract number 1, which is for the package 0 construction for the Mark Shuffle Road improvements. This is for water line relocation, drainage facilities and grading in preparation for roadway improvements in proximity to Mark Shuffle Road and Barnes. I will point out on your contract list, there is a typo in the math. The PPRTA portion is 2,621,000. Sorry, $2,621,213.06. There was a $3,000 math error on my part. And the other portions are covered by the city's general fund in the amount of $981,818. So the total contract we're recommending for approval is $3,603,031.06.
Gail, let me just clarify. So this is on page 16 of the board packet where it says 2,624,000. It should be 2,621,000.
That is correct.
So, okay, so thank you.
The other item on the list is actually item 9 and 11, but I'm going to focus, I'm sorry, 9 and 10. I'm going to focus on item number 10. It's the Rustic Hills paving. We've talked about paving those streets in that area, much requested from the citizens in that area. We went out to a construction advertisement where we had 2 alternates. The total bid came in with both alternates of $4.8 million for Summers Construction. So we're going to be able to proceed, given your approval, be able to proceed with paving all the streets within that area, which is an enclave within the city of Colorado, a former county enclave within the city of Colorado Springs that currently has dirt roads.
Okay, thank you. Dirt roads and rustic hills, because there are different development standards in the county versus the city.
Right. The Rustic Hills I know does not have dirt roads.
Is that southeast of Constitution and Murray?
See, that's the Rustic Hills I know.
It's either southeast or southwest, or no, it's
was-
northeast. Hold on.
I was just at Rustic Hills Shopping
I did
Center.
put a map in your packet, so let me.
I'll go
look
back
at
and
that.
look at the map.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Sorry. I can't, of course, I can't read that map.
Okay, Constitution.
What is this?
So I believe it's on board page 36. And thank you, by the way, for the I know at one point we didn't have consecutive numbering. That does make it much easier. So I do want to thank our staff for doing that. Thank you.
And it is southeast of Constitution and Murray. The city came through and did a maintenance project in there, I believe in 2020, where they paved a few of those roads. And we've been working on the next couple phases, and this was the first bid opportunity we've had to finish that work in that area. And again, with the maintenance funding, we had been storing for that, or budgeting for that area. We had enough to complete construction in that location.
Thank you very much. Are there any board member questions on any of the items? Councilmember Avila.
Thank you. So we're finished with the line item transfer. So was that money coming for the Mark Shuffle Road and for Rustic Hills? I listened to this on my reader and my eyeballs were going like this.
Okay, so Mark, the Rustic Hills one, that's his easier one to answer first. It's all maintenance funds for the roads in there.
So that comes from our maintenance fund.
It is maintenance funds. In the past, we've spent tons of money doing a lot of grading, hauling material in there. So it made sense, instead of keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, to apply asphalt in that area. And we've had a lot of requests for that and other drainage improvements. So we're going to do that with this project.
So that makes total sense to me.
Yes.
How about the other one?
Okay, so Mark Shuffle Road, this contract has three funding sources. The first one I've been using, I have $981,818 remaining in the city's general fund, which came from an annexation agreement for abandoning Lewis Ranch. If you recall, when I brought their first pre-construction contract of $1.7 million, that was completely funded also from that same account. So those two values together is 2.7 million of city's general fund money. Then RTA $1, both what we got from the county and the additional development contribution the city has received. It was $1,048,491. So that's RTA $1 money going back to the benefit of Mark Shuffle Road. And then the remaining, and this is where the other $3,000 is $1,572,722.06 are coming from intersection improvements program.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Are there any other questions from the board members about the city contracts? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Okay. I would move to approve item 7B with the change in line 1 that has been stated by Ms. Sturdivant, but I have it written down as 2,621,213.06. No,
That is the correct amount for the PPRTA portion. The overall contract value is for $3,603,031.06.
okay, so which motion do I make?
Whoa,
How the changes recommended by the city on the numbers on item
Okay,
contract item.
I would move a motion to amend with the changes recommended by the city. Item number 7B.
is there a second?
Second.
Their motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Passes unanimously. Brings us to item 7C. El Paso contracts. Joshua, any of those you wish to highlight?
There's only the one in your packet. There's several pages and these are $0 contracts. The final year of our on-call statement of qualifications. So basically pre-call qualifications or on-call contracts ended at the end of 2022. So this is just our next 5-year cycle of on-call contracts. So they're all $0, but these are professional services that the county can draw from for 2 different dollar amounts, up to from 0 to 150,000 and from 150 to 500,000 per project per year.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? If seeing none, is there a motion?
Mayor Dixon, I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Passes unanimously. It brings us to Item 8A, which is the City of Colorado Springs Transit Services Monthly Update. And after this, we'll take a 10-minute break.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, Land Rail Transit Services Acting Manager. What's in your packet is our January report. Since this is the first month for the year, we updated the format of the report, and we are here to get our feedback and any recommendations that you would like to make for future reports. So I will spend a few minutes going through the report. The first section in this report is basically an overview of the transit services that we provide. The second section is the normal ridership update that you will see. For the first month in 2023, we saw ridership increase across all three modes: fixed route, ADA paratransit, and van pool. Fixed route saw the biggest increase compared to January last year of almost 40%. This second page of the report is basically a month-over-month bar chart comparison, reflecting those increases. Then we move on to the pie chart. What's in this pie chart is, this is a new section included in the report. Instead of seeing per mode of transportation comparison, we put the entire month's ridership together from fixed route, ADA, and van pool. Total ridership was 169,438. Of that, 94% was provided on local fixed route, 5% on ADA paratransit, and 1% on van pool. The table below is also new information. What we included in this table is a year-over-year comparison on ridership, on revenue service hours, and also on passenger trips per revenue service hours. The first column is the passenger trips. Second column is revenue service hours, which you will see 2019 being the pre-COVID information, then 2020, 21, and 22. The trips per hour is a measure to basically capture the efficiency of the service. In 2019, we had a system average of over 16 passengers per hour on local fixed route. That number decreased to a little over 11 during COVID. On the ADA side, it's actually a little more consistent from 2019 to 2022. Van pool, you will see those numbers change as well. One comment from the CAC was they would like to see a apples to apples comparison, because what we had included for 2023 was basically a year-to-date information. They would like to see, if it's January 2023, how about that efficiency comparison for January 2019 all the way through 2023. So we will make that adjustment for next month. Then the third section is the highlight of the main projects. We did include more information in terms of our service improvements. As of today, we are looking at 94% of the services restored, as well as additional improvements that we included in the PPRTA budget amendments in the last 2 years, but were not able to implement due to driver shortage. So the 94% service being provided is reflecting basically both the service restored as well as the additional services added. The latest information I have is we're hoping to restore the last 2 service cuts that we made during COVID on Route 1 and 27. So those would be the last 2. March 20, Route 1 is the first one. We're hoping March 20th, but 27 will come. That frequency restore will come later than that. One challenge with the driver shortages, we are latest 1 driver short. That's the latest information. However, the challenge is there are still driver call off due to whether it's retirement or just natural attrition or calling in sick. So that's the unknown factor. We're a little more confident on the Route 1 15-minute restoration. 27 will still have to give it a little more time, but we're getting really close there. The last report included, the last chart included in this report is a mobile ticketing summary. We implemented the mobile ticketing project, started the implementation in May 2022. It's still in the process of full implementation, but we included information for the last 6 months, and we saw a usage of 29% of our bus pass sales incurred on mobile ticketing. So it is a good start, and we can provide more information later on. So that's our report. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Councilmember Avila.
Len, I really appreciate what you've been doing since you've been stepping in for this, but I just want everybody to know, right? The pandemic, March 2020. And so we go from very little bus routes to finally hoping this year, maybe March, for Route 1. Route 1 and 27 are both in Southeast Colorado Springs, 15-minute frequency and really heavily used. So looking forward to having that back, but it has been a brutal 3 years for transit, and especially for the riders of transit. So many of them come downtown for their jobs, or they connect to 25, which is at Citadel, to go up north to work there. So it's been an arduous 3 years, and I'm ready for it to get back and better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I agree with my colleague. It is good to see those numbers up, and it looks like our new contractor is working hard to make sure we have enough drivers, because you can't do much on a bus route without one.
Agreed.
So thank you.
Thank you.
I was going to say, given our previous discussion, it almost feels like we should have a ribbon cutting to get these rides going back.
Yeah, it probably is at least worth a press release when we do have that last route, every route back up to where it was before.
Will do. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodine. Rodine.
Yes, sir. How's the bus terminal working? In progress being built?
Well, there was actually a very good city council information session a couple weeks ago. So if you are interested, you can go to city website. Where we are on that project is we are have been working through the contract with the design firm. And I believe we're very close, or we already have a signed contract. So we are moving forward with the concept design at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
So, and just a real quick summary for those who may not have followed it, we have the current downtown transit center requires buses to stack behind each other and has a host of other problems. And so city has long sought a better location, and we are in the process of looking at one with respect to just south of the city auditorium, which is across the street from the existing bus station. And but it's a fairly complicated concept that would have non-linear bus stops down below, meaning that a bus could pull in and out without waiting for the other. Parking garage on the next few levels, and something else above that. And so it's a little more complicated process to try to be efficiently using the downtown site. So, but yeah, the whole work session was public. So go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, as promised, we'll take a break. We'll come back in 10 minutes, which, yeah. We are back in session.
Could I ask you a quick question? That's what I was, so it would make a difference. But the whole
Yeah.
thing, yeah, okay. All right.
We are back in session. We 1, 2, 3, 4. We continue to have a quorum. And so we will go to these are member governments and other reports. The first of those is board policy number 30. And this is a proposed approval item. Except Jim, Mr. Godfrey, can I get your attention? So with respect to policy 30, did CAC wants to continue to look at this? Is that correct? Or is CAC ready to proceed?
Number 30. We want it where.
Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. For policy number 30, we are not ready to bring a recommendation, so we were just looking for feedback.
Okay, so we've already provided feedback. Is there any further discussion you wish to have on this item?
Recommend postponing.
Okay. And this is listed as an approval item. CAC has asked for additional time to review it. Is there a motion to postpone this for 1 month?
So Brady Helms makes the motion.
The mayor beat you there.
Yep.
Your second.
There you go, Mayor.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Very good. Mayor Dixon, motion, and Mr. Helms, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Carries. Brings us to the City of Colorado Springs monthly change order and property acquisition report. Are there any questions about anything in the change order and acquisition report, or anything, Gail, that you wish to bring to our attention in this?
Nothing of note for this period.
Seeing this is an information item, seeing no questions on it. We'll proceed to the Town of Green Mountain Falls monthly change order report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything you want to bring to our attention, sir?
Oh, it's kind of one of these deals where you remember an old box of Cracker Jacks where you open it up and you get a surprise at the bottom. Pretty much every time we put a shovel in dirt, we get a surprise. And or we sorry.
Is it a good surprise or a bad?
Usually a bad surprise.
It's almost always a bad surprise.
So yeah, a lot of the change orders have to deal with when we open up the ground, we find things that weren't supposed to be there, like communications lines and other things. And then on top of that, if we vibrate the ground too much in some of these areas, we'll break water lines. The infrastructure is that old, so it's it's bad.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the board on these matters? Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Brings us to quarterly reports from member governments. You have those in your file. Are there anything that any of the member governments wish to bring to our attention in those reports?
Nothing from the city of Colorado Springs.
Joshua, anything from the county?
Nothing from the county either.
And any of the other jurisdictions? Okay. Are there any board members that have questions on any of those reports? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to item 9A, which is our legislative report. And is our lobbyist with us at the moment?
Yes, he is.
Excellent, Dan's iPhone.
He's running from committee room to committee room, but he has found a nice quiet phone booth like Superman here at the Colorado Capitol. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Please proceed. Oh, man of steel.
Right now, for the PPRTA, we were tracking a few bills. One of them that might have impacted us a little bit was the exclusion of the ability to charge retailers to charge delivery fees, which there was some sales tax involved in, but that was brought to us by our friend Rose up there, which predictably died in committee. Currently, what we're still tracking, which is held up in Senate appropriations, is Senate Bill 2316, the greenhouse gas emission reduction measure. That won't see the light of day, at least until after the budget, which will go to the floor on March 27th. Currently, there's been, I think, 312 bills dropped. And I know today I was told there's currently at least 125 late bills waiting for signature. Today has been taken up mostly in the Senate. The Senate president had 3 gun bills. That was in the Senate Veterans and Military Affairs, and the House big bill today just actually concluded, which was the underinsurance bill 1174. So a lot of action at the Capitol right now. The budget is really taking kind of slowing the process down, except for the gun bills, for the fact that so many of these bills are waiting for funding and waiting to see how many funds are going to be left. So that's what's happening now. The gun bills will hit the floor tomorrow, I was told. So that will kind of shut down the chamber for sure. Happy to answer any questions or concerns or whatever else you guys would like to hear.
Thank you. Any questions for Dan? Seeing none, thank you for your continued vigilance on our behalf, and we'll let you come out of your Superman changing room.
I wish this thing had a door instead of a window because everyone was laughing at me when I change. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dad. Have a great day.
Bye.
Okay, that brings us to item 9B. Sorry, brings us to item 9B, which is draft board policy number 32 to define completely funded. Just a reminder for the reason for the discussion and the language of the Pikes Peak RTA. In order to go from A list to B list projects, we have to completely fund the A list. But we never had to define that at the end of RTA 1 because there was not any excess money to allow us to get to the B list. But now we are at that stage. And part of the reason for the discussion here is so that as staff prepares budgets for this next year, they know what to do. And we also don't want to wait for the absolute completion of every project, because that could be years from now and you would have the funds sitting there being unused to help our community. And so we have had discussion on who's going to lead us in this. Rick, we'll turn it over to you.
During the break, I've received input from Board Attorney Jennifer Ivey and Gail Sturdivant that there's 8 or 10 words worth of tweaking that need to be handled. So staff is recommending postponement so we can get those words added back in and sent back to the CAC in April and back to the board in April.
Okay, we want to get it right, and there is not an immediate need. We're planning ahead here, and so Commissioner Gonzalez is eager to move to continue this item.
Yes, so moved. Thank you.
Okay.
I would like to have some more discussion.
Okay. So
This one is pretty dear to me.
okay. Are you okay holding that off, Commissioner Gonzalez, so we can have?
Absolutely.
Thank
Okay.
you. Mayor Dixon.
First off, I have several concerns. The first concern is that this seems to move to a shovel-ready definition. And I'm wondering why we don't just basically use contract signage, because that seems to be much more cleaner. And, you know, at that point, the funds for it would be more defined. And you wouldn't have all, you know, a lot of this extra stuff in there. So first concern, why are we not just doing basically contract, you know, basically award the contract and having that be the definition for fully funded. To me, that makes more sense than shovel ready with all these other conditions on it. Okay, if that's not something that this body wants to proceed on with, I have some other concerns. The other concern would be for Green Mountain Falls, these class 1 or class 2 opinions of whatever. Pardon me, opinion of probable construction cost. We typically have to go in and pursue additional funding to do preliminary engineering and cost estimates. And so that's a little bit of a concern for me on, okay, we're going to be now using, a big chunk of our RTA money to just do that, or are we going to have to go chase another grant? The other, and then again, if this body doesn't agree with that, the other thing I have is, this is kind of understood as a final year type piece of work where you come in like year 9. And just like in our legislature, where there's a lot of intent that doesn't make it into the language, I'm not saying final year in the actual policy. And then finally, down here on item, let's see, what is it? Item 2, where it goes through 1 through 7. It says, item 2 makes a request to another entity for line item transfer from one of their A-list capital projects, and if approved by that entity, makes a request to the CAC and the board to approve the line item transfer. The 2 entities shall declare if the line item transfer is a loan or a gift. And I would love to have a gift so we don't have to borrow against our future earnings. Do we really want to have gift, or do we want to have a gifting be a much more involved process? So that's all the comments I have.
Okay. So those are questions for the CAC to take a look at. I appreciate you bringing those up to us. It's not necessarily, the policy wouldn't necessarily only be limited to the final year, because there could be a sequence in which we completely fund projects in year 8. And so, but it's clearly something as we get towards the end of that. Does Green Mountain Falls have any A-list projects that are not complete?
No, we're in our final one now.
Okay.
Yeah, the Stilling Basin was fine. That's the one we had to borrow against future earnings. That's why the gift language really caught my attention.
So yeah, and maybe gift is not the best word, but there may be times when, well, I'll just look at RTA 1 where the county says, hey, city, you're building Mark Shuffle now. This money was for Mark Shuffle.
And then move it over.
Right. And then
Yeah.
it's a move over. So we probably should use a better word than a gift.
Yeah, I would think you'd want to maybe use something more along the lines of a transfer between, if one entity takes over an existing voter approved project.
Yeah. So those are some things for CAC to look at as you go forward and your discussion. This is an important element because, and I guess I would say that question, the first of those questions you asked of when do we move? When do we say, yes, we have enough, so now we can start looking at B, is important, because until we can start doing the engineering and other things, we can't actually accomplish those B-list projects. And so knowing sooner is better, but you do have more certainty the longer you wait. And that's part of what this board will have to resolve as to where to draw that line after we get the recommendation from our CAC. Okay. With that, now any needful discussion? Jim, did you have something you wanted to say before we continue this?
Yes, very, very briefly, if I may. And because on that last issue about a gift or thing, the discussion around the CAC was that this is a regional program. And in the last year, the board typically does not establish priorities for projects and or funding other than presented in the budget and within their allocation that goes forward. the discussion at the CAC was in that final year. If there's a project where someone needs money that they don't have to completely fund something so that everybody can move to the B list, that the board could direct that transfer happen between entities. And so it becomes regional money in that final angling to get projects fully funded. And so if that's the wrong assumption, then let me know, because we want to change that, because that's the assumption that in the final year, and as we get through the prioritizing of the A-list projects, that the priority is getting everybody's A-list projects funded. And then we go to that. And so if there's transfer between entities, even though it's out of their allotment or whatever, to make that happen, our assumption was that was what you wanted to do.
Okay, thank you, sir. Seeing no other hands up, I will now go back to Commissioner Gonzalez.
Move, yeah, I forgot what we were trying to do, move to postpone.
Motions to next month's meeting.
And I'll second that.
Okay, thank you for permitting the discussion. The reason I wanted to do it that way is because otherwise we're debating the motion to continue, and that would not be as smooth. Motion's been made to continue this to next month's meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. That passes unanimously. In terms of Pikes Peak RTA member announcements, we will begin with a presentation of the 2 tardy plaques.
Oh, yes.
Because you may recall a couple months ago, we had individuals recognized who were serving on the committee, the campaign committee, in their personal capacities. And there were plaques presented for recognition to a couple members of the committee, but not to a couple of the others. And so those plaques are now have been made. So I'll just announce that those are there. And we'll take a picture after the meeting is over. But just so you're aware that staff did follow through on the ones who had not received it at the time. We'll just go around the room here. Any member announcements?
Not at this time, thank you. Raymond, nothing at this time. No.
Yeah, nothing here.
Yolanda?
Yeah, I want to share that today is International Women's Day. And the chamber held an event yesterday for women that are in business or elected officials, that high stressed areas, and how to gain balance. But one of the things they said is a young person smiles 400 times a day, and an adult it's 17 times a day. So because they live in the present, they live in the moment. They're not angry and aggrieved about the past, and they're not anxious and fearful about the future. So I just thought that was great. And the second thing is that we're having a town hall today, CSU. And if you want to go meet our new CEO, Wayne will be there as our chair for a little bit. And it'll be in District 4. And I invite you all to come. And we're going to have a little food there because I like food at my town halls. Okay, we'll talk. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. It's at meet and greet starts at 5:30 and the town hall actually starts at 6.
Randy?
In case it's not obvious, I think one or more of our board members won't be here, but we got one more month. And so one or more, next April will be the last board member for one or more of our members, depending on how the election turns out. So.
Oh, you didn't meant for your kid, but yeah.
Yeah, not me.
You might switch around.
I'm just saying.
Thank you, Randy, for your
One-
service.
One or more. No, I'll be.
I'm going to keep Yolanda, but thank you.
If I wasn't clear, one or more. Yeah. Yeah. Well, depending on who gets elected mayor, I guess.
We're keeping Yolanda. Wayne's leaving no matter what, and
Right.
you can decide.
All right.
But
That's
if
it.
Lahinos wins,
That's why
I
I was it.
You
That
could
was
have one or more.
I was trying to say that without saying it. Yes.
There you go.
I'm sorry I wasn't clear. That's it.
You might forget you're running for something. Okay, with that, and with hearty congratulations to our newlywed council member Yolanda Avila.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of love on that, so I appreciate it. And it's nice to have a kind, gentle man as a partner.
Awesome. And yeah, I'm appreciative to Leroy because he helps out in lots of ways. So for all of us on council. So thank you for your attendance today. Thank you for the discussion. Jim, Larry, thank you very much for the CAC and the work that you were doing on these important policy issues. And we're glad you're there to help wrestle through some of the challenges. With that, we are adjourned.